Visit expressvpn.com/yang and get 3 extra months of ExpressVPN for free.
The single biggest thing that America has right now going against it is that we have 4 or 5 companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, that sucks up the enormity and the overwhelming majority of all talented technical human capital. Because if you are a smart young kid, a guy or girl graduating from a college, and you know how to code, or how to do something unique, how do you turn around to your family and say, I'm going to go and work at this startup for 80 grand a year, or this nonprofit or something else, versus going and getting paid $1 million a year at one of these big companies? It's really impossible, right? I mean, I don't know your situation, but when I graduated, that was the biggest sword of Damocles over my neck, was the student debt that I had. And so, but when they go there, what products are they working on? This is unfettered free agentism. Imagine that you had a professional sports league where there was no salary cap. What would you do? You would go and hire, and you would sign every single great player, stick them on the bench. You'd be guaranteed to win a championship. You'd be a monopolistic championship winner year in, year out.
You're saying that they get paid to do nothing? Because when you say the bench, that's what I thought of.
Yeah. No. That is the exact explicit strategy.
Zach, we are back. This week it's going to be Chamath Palihapitiya, who's a rock star, investor, visionary, entrepreneur. But before that, we're going to talk about maybe the greatest thing I've ever been associated with, which is that we helped get stimulus checks into this relief bill. And as we're having this conversation, text is still getting finalized. It looks like it's going to be $600 to $700 for every adult and child. But that adds up to something like $150 billion that's gonna go out in the form of checks right as people need it the most. And thank you to everyone who helped make that happen. I'd love to walk through some of how it happened with you for our audience.
So this is let's be clear on this. We both agree $600 to $700 per person is not enough. Like we're bigger. We want more than that. However, it is way better than zero. So walk us through. I'm beaming right now because I've been, particularly we've been working on this for a couple of months, but particularly the past couple of weeks, we've really started to kick butt. And the national media is never going to give you a lot of stuff behind the scenes anyway, but they're not going to be like, Andrew Yang saved the day. But I actually believe you have saved the day, and Humanity Forward actually has saved the day in a healthy way. So walk us through what has happened from your end, and then how we got to where we are right now.
So if you remember in the run-up to the election, Nancy Pelosi and Mnuchin and to a less extent McConnell just couldn't come to a deal. And there was a moment when there was a $1.8 trillion offer that had some problems, but it was still like to me like the best offer I'd seen on the table. And I went public and said, hey, we should probably think about taking that deal because that's like the best it's going to get. And Mitch McConnell hates it. And right now they have political interest in trying to get something done. So that deal did not happen. And after the election, Humanity Forward pivoted very, very hard to lobbying for cash relief. Right. We become a cash relief organization that
advocacy machine, if you will.
Yeah, advocacy. And you know what it reminds me of, and you and I joke about this, Zach, there was a headline in The Onion 10 years ago, which was the American people hire a lobbyist to represent their interests on Capitol Hill. And there's like a picture of a lobbyist who gets paid lots of money. And that headline stuck with me for 10 years because I thought, that's a pretty good idea. Like maybe we should hire a lobbyist just to hang out and be like, hey, you know what would help the people? stimulus checks.
For the record, I think The Onion has some of the most insightful, hilarious headlines. Like sometimes, like there's a reason they had a jester back in the day. Sometimes satire is the only way to like cut to the core of the truth. So kudos to The Onion.
Yeah. So we had this pivot to talking to members of Congress, and I've had over 65 Zooms with different House members, senators over the last number of weeks. And I have to say, anytime one of those meetings hits my schedule, I got so pumped because I thought to myself that there's at least some chance that this conversation will lead to unlocking tens, hundreds of billions of dollars for the American people.
Yeah.
So we've been working on it. And then about 2 weeks ago, still no deal, a group of bipartisan senators stepped forward and said, hey, here's a $900 billion compromise bill that ended up getting all sorts of momentum because there were some Republicans on it, some Democrats on it, and it looked like it could pass the Senate, which has been the bottleneck this whole time. And that did not include stimulus checks. The $900 billion was unemployment insurance, love it. Coronavirus costs and resources, love it. Obviously, like some for vaccine distribution. The disputed elements ended up being aid to city and states, which I completely support, and this liability shield. So this bipartisan gang of senators could not agree on those two elements, and so they cut the $900 billion package by $160 billion or so with the city and state government aid in a separate bill. Now, simultaneously, we were having conversations with members of Congress, letting them know, look, all your people love cash relief. Economists love it. 74% of Americans are for it, including a majority of both parties. And we got enough folks excited where there was a bipartisan bill led by Representatives Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware, who's a Democrat, and David McKinley of West Virginia, who's a Republican. So this bipartisan cash relief bill that percolated in the House a couple of weeks ago. And that was a result of, those 65 plus conversations over a period of weeks where we've been pinging various members. So then at the last mile, when they couldn't agree on this city and state government aid, then they ended up swapping in the stimulus checks of $600 or so for every adult and child, which costs about that much money. Like, let's call it $160 billion. So when I got the call saying that stimulus checks are in because of us, like I jumped for joy. I ran around and like grabbed Evelyn and was like, I think this is like the greatest thing I've ever done, because you think about the tens of millions of Americans who are struggling right now, getting $600 a person. Like, let's say that you have, two folks in your household that would qualify. Could be like a single mom and a child. I mean, $1,200 in January is going to be a game changer. Couldn't agree more that, in my mind, we should be doing something much more dramatic, ongoing for everyone. But realistically, this bill, when it first hit the Senate floor, didn't have any stimulus checks in it. And so the fact that it went from not having stimulus checks to stimulus checks is a major, major win. And thank you to the team at Humanity Forward. Thank you to everyone who's donated to our efforts, because this return, we did the math, it's something like a 1,000,000x return on what we've spent on direct lobbying. And we've spent much more on a lot of other things. We've given $10 million away to folks or so. But we haven't spent that much money on lobbying. It's been a lot of my time. And my time costs nothing in our calculation. So it was like, but really it's everyone who helped elevate this movement to a point where members of Congress and senators are happy to take a meeting with me. That's actually in many ways the accomplishment of the last couple of years, where we elevated our movement to a point where folks will meet with me because they'll know, look, Yang's got a lot of fans. He's got, a 1,000,000-person mailing list, like social media following 1 million. So thank you. We freaking did it. We helped get real relief to the American people. And again, the highest point of my career thus far.
It makes me so proud, and I'm so excited to be part of it. And I think there's a couple things. One, just make sure everybody knows, we think it's fundamentally ridiculous that it took this long and this much work to make this happen. It seems like a no-brainer to help your people in the pandemic. If you're a Canadian, you've received tons of money so the economy doesn't crash, so your society doesn't crumble. So we're behind the curve as a nation, and it's really frustrating. But I will say this: when we ran, Andrew, we were frustrated when we met the leadership and the people in charge in some ways, because we didn't think they were in touch with a lot of the people we were talking to, and our conclusion, and my conclusion in particular, was that the cavalry wasn't coming to save us. There was no cavalry, and we were it. And this effort, and frankly, quick success, like, we haven't been doing this that long. For us to have as much influence as we did on getting this through shows to me that we have to be the cavalry. Doing something was, one, better than nothing, but two, so powerful because no one's doing anything. Like, we were going to senators and congressmen and women and saying, hey, your constituents are hurting. They need cash. Everybody supports it. And what was their reaction, Andrew? I didn't even know that. That makes sense to me. Thank you for telling me that. I'll fight for that. There's no political
what they
downside.
didn't see was the numbers. Like, all of them expressed, like, wow, 74% approval rating. Like, that's as high as it gets. And there's no reason they would have known that necessarily without us providing it. It's been a real education. So there are two things. I mean, put very simply, like, we're in a deep, dark hole. Our government should be helping to dig us out. I think it is ridiculous that people are hemming and hawing about the cost of water when the house is on fire. It's like, just get the hoses out and start going to work. And so it should be in the trillions of dollars. But there are two things we can influence, in my mind. Number one is, what's the size of the overall relief? The higher, the better, in my view. Multiple trillions, yes, we should do that.
Especially if more goes to people.
The second thing is the composition of the aid. It's like, if you have a higher proportion go directly to people and families, that's a win. If you have a lower proportion go to megacorps that are just going to, like, stick it on their balance sheet and chill with it, and probably, frankly, furlough people anyway, like Walt Disney did, like, that's a loss. So those are the two things I'm trying to influence, is like, more is better, more to people is better. And on this one, there was even a chance, we were told that, like, there might have been less on the table. Like that, like, there's no guarantee. So when they had this disputed 160 billion or so in city and state aid, there was no guarantee that was going to get replaced. Like, because what they did is they separated the legislation into the part that everyone could agree on, and they separated that part. So the fact that stimulus checks got in there, like, grew that relief package by 160 billion or so, and it went directly to people. So those are the goals we're chasing. And if anyone listening to this thinks, like, wow, you want to be a part of this, please do. Follow Humanity Forward, become a recurring donator to Humanity Forward. Think of it as, like, the best investment you'd ever make, because this stuff works. Like, I was joking, but it's like, lobbying fucking works. No wonder companies do it.
It works.
It's like,
it works.
Yeah, like, we like, just got in there and
it worked. I'm laughing because it worked.
It like blew my mind, like, completely.
Dude, we spent
we
spent like $9 million giving money to people and families, and that was awesome, right? But we spent $120,000, let's say, giving it to some lobbying firms that we like and trusted, and to go fight for people, and now we're getting billions to go to people.
Yeah, it does make one think about the ratio. And to be clear, this is like a magical moment. We were in the right place at the right time. We had some great legislators like Lisa Blunt Rochester and David McKinley, and Bernie
came
Sanders.
out and supported it, right?
Yeah, like a bunch of other folks. So a lot of things had to converge at the same time. But I can genuinely say, I believe that we were integral to this happening. Like, if we have not been working it, then there was a real chance that this does not happen. And I couldn't be happier and prouder. It's like that. It is wild. It's like this is the pinnacle of impact on human life that I can actually point to. Topping this is going to be difficult, but we should definitely keep trying, because like, the crisis is going to rage on. There are going to be more relief bills coming out of Congress in the new year for sure, because the city and state government piece is still there. Democrats are going to fight for it, rightfully, by the way, in my view. So there are going to be more relief packages, and we have to keep on trying to improve them.
Yeah. You called me yesterday and you said, Zach, this is the greatest thing I've ever done. And not from a like, I did this because a lot of people did this, but more on like you look at your career and you try to reflect on yourself and what impact you had in the world, and said, look, we could hang it up right now and feel proud about the level of dent we've put into other positive dent we've put in other people's lives, and we're not going to hang
part
up,
of it too, Zach. Is that now you had 2 relief packages and 2 stimulus checks. Like now everyone's going to be like, hey, can't be a relief package without stimulus checks. I mean, that also is a win. This really does set like a very, very firm precedent. And the stimulus checks are the most popular things we're doing.
One of our early digital guys, Andrew Frawley, on the campaign said, he was with us from day one, and he was saying that he's asking if we had survivorship bias from the campaign, in the sense that when you survive a car crash, something crazy, and like with no odds to live through it, you believe you're invincible. And we keep having these massive successes that are like completely improbable. And there's this one hand that's like, it's because we're invincible or because we can do anything. And that's not true. But it feels somewhat like everything we're touching is having success. And it's because I think we've tapped into a movement. You are powered. This movement is powered. This podcast is powered by amazing people who all see what's happening, and you are the vessel for them. And frankly, in my opinion, and I believe it's a fact, fiercely loyal to them. Like you'll make tough decisions, but you are fighting for them. I know that because I live it. Because I'm like, we should do this. And you're like, people don't want that. We got to do that. I see that a lot with you. But it's just fun to watch kind of the outrageous wins we've been able to have, even though frankly in these dark times. So that does excite me, and hopefully it excites you too, Andrew.
This is still a very early stage for this movement that we're building. It's funny because I ran for president, and we had a measure of success, and there was part of me that was like, well, we have to transfer the energy very quickly into like an ongoing organization and movement in the form of Humanity Forward, and I did not expect us to have this kind of impact this quickly, really. So that's a thrill. Of course, we're in the midst of an historic catastrophe, and our government should be doing much, much more. So I think we're plugging into, as you said, just what people see is the right thing. Like the cases we're making. And that's one of the things that really has surprised me about the institutional nature of it all, is that like when I said, hey, Nancy Pelosi should probably take that deal or a version of it, and then people like attacked me for it, and so it was like, who are you to like question this person's judgment? I was really, really shocked that there were so few people that raised their hand and were like, hey, people need help, winter's coming, like this is a lot of money, like let's do this thing. It was crickets for the most part. I mean, it was very odd, and the fact that people were, attacking me for it, I was like, use your judgment. Sometimes offers get worse, not better. Like the amount of political leverage you have right now is as high as it's ever going to be. Like, why would you think that it's going to go up from 1.8 trillion, not down? It's like, and so. Like that, there's this real institutionalization. This is why our movement has so much power, Zach, is that there are a number of people who actually see it and then evaluate it and be like, okay, that makes sense to me. And we have institutions that are putting forward a lot of things that only make sense if you're embedded in like whatever weird landscape it is. Like stimulus checks for people make common sense to everyone in the country. 3/4 of Americans are for it. The only place where it makes less sense is as soon as you get to Capitol Hill. Then all of a sudden it's like, we should really be like looking at other things. Or the media narratives. It's like you can see something happening, and only in the media would that make sense.
Yes.
In many ways, like we're like the layer of people who are like calling out stuff that we can all see and fight for. And my campaign was about, people versus the machines, and people thought of that as like robots, AI, which it kind of was, technology, though I don't hate that stuff. I mean, I'm kind of into it. But it's really, it's another set of machines, really. It's like this institutional machinery where shit that makes no sense makes sense. and vice versa.
What I really hope is like, look, I think there's a lot of people that we love the savior complex where you put your hope in Trump, you put your hope in Bernie, you put your hope in Biden, you put your hope in Andrew Yang, right? The person. And I understand that. I felt that in some ways. I feel that about Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills, or things like that. But the reality is, what really saves you is, and will save us is more than Andrew. It's the rationality and common sense we're trying. It's the ideas and logic behind what will actually help us. And you're not going to be perfect. I'm not going to be perfect, right? Like that, you'll never be everything to everybody, but you can rationally try to solve a lot of these problems that are messy and complicated and put a sane human being in charge of a lot of these things. Like that's what I hope we can convey. Like love or hate you, me, the movement, the intentionality and logic behind the solutions we're presenting should help a lot of people, and cut through the noise, because there's such a lack of that in politics. You agree with that?
Oh, well, I certainly agree that with the fact that, hanging everyone's hopes on like singular leaders is not optimal for a movement. And the movement will coalesce around new leaders in different ways. Like Trumpism's going to outlive Trump, like no matter what. And that there's a massive appetite for the principles we stand for, that is manifesting in different ways. I agree with those things. Certainly also agree with my own fallibility and definitely your fallibility.
Yeah, sure. I feel like at the bar here, like I'm just trying to keep up, man.
Kidding. I mean, it's like, but we're only human, and like it's like, I will say I don't feel that much artifice. I mean, I feel like most people know what you and I are about, and even when we screw up, they'll be like, that makes
bad.
sense.
We're trying.
But the cash relief portion, really, everyone who has touched this movement, everyone who supported my presidential campaign, you should really hold your head up high today, because everything we did to try and mainstream these ideas and make it so that we could influence policy paid off for tens of millions of Americans for real this winter. I could not be prouder. I could not be happier. I hope you're proud and happy too. And I hope this reinforces the importance of what we've done and to continue to do. Like I actually feel more energized and invigorated and frankly able to influence real life things than I did certainly the day we suspended my presidential campaign. And that's a wonderful feeling, because you run for president, you don't win, like what next? And I'm 100% certain that we have grown in influence and reach and impact leaps and bounds since then. I am so freaking proud of that. So thank you, Yang Gang. Thank you, Zach. Thank you to the team at Humanity Forward. So proud of you all. We just got to keep going. But this is something we should relish and celebrate.
Amen. With that, let's go to our guests, man. I don't think we get better than that. What an episode. What a moment for us. We got a lot of work to do, but I'm a big believer in celebrating the wins, and this looks like a win,
Such a win. High point of my professional life. So coming up next, fascinating conversation with world-class investor, visionary, futurist, Chamath Palihapitiya. He's become famous more recently because he was on CNBC, and then folks were asking him what to do about these companies and industries, and he was like, who cares about the companies and industries? We have like systems for that. They have to go through like a recap or a reorg or bankruptcy. It's fine. Just take care of the people. Just like send the money to the folks who work at those companies, and then like our corporate systems have processes. And then people are like, but what about the investors? And he's like, who cares? Like, we'll be fine. It's like, why are you trying to recap these companies and like preserve the investors instead of the people that work at them? So that CNBC clip went viral, and got him a lot of praise, rightfully so, because it really like that was a dose of common sense. And the fact that he said it on CNBC, everyone was so like shocked and appalled. It was so coming up next, my convo with Chamath Palihapitiya. The Yang Gang is a very creative bunch. We love to learn. We love to interface with folks who are a little bit ahead of us on the curve in a particular skill. And one way to get everything you need from a creative class or community is Skillshare. Skillshare is the world's leading community of folks who want to get better and learn from experts. It's an online learning community that offers membership with meaning. Ooh, like that does that not sound like us? It sounds like us to me. It's also incredibly affordable because that's also very us. We try and keep things affordable around here.
So I last time I talked about this iPhone photography class I took, and now I'm doing DIY, do-it-yourself product photography. Not that I want to be a photographer. I just find it helpful because we take a lot more photos than you realize. And my photos always suck. They always suck. I take a photo of the family. It's all shadowy. You look funny. You got 3 chins, whatever it is. So you try to, I've been learning some cool tips and tricks on how to be a better photographer just for like everyday life, which I find helpful. So if you are interested in learning more and taking these types of either creative or thoughtful or marketing classes, Skillshare.com is pretty awesome. You just go to Skillshare.com/YangSpeaks and get a free trial. So it's a free trial of premium membership. That's one of a kind. It can be personalized and perfectly imperfect. Learn a whole bunch of things about what you put your time and your effort. And it's a great gift around the holidays to show how much you care about someone who's looking for self-improvement and stuff to do during quarantine. So Skillshare.com/YangSpeaks. Get your free trial. Check it out. It's pretty awesome.
It is my pleasure to welcome to Yang Speaks. I've been looking forward to this conversation for months. Chamath Palihapitiya. Chamath, how are you?
Andrew, what's going on, man?
Now, how to introduce this man? It's like one of the most innovative investors in the universe. But more than that, he's like an iconoclast, a speaker of truth, someone who goes and like shakes the trees. You first hit, I feel like, at least my consciousness and the consciousness of a lot of folks, and I know this was it was kind of fraught, is when you expressed your reservations about everything that went down with Facebook, and you were like, man, I'm not sure if we if we were like the pure good we kind of hoped to be, but you've done so much since then.
Yeah, it was that was 2016, and that was the first time I think people outside of tech knew who I was. People inside of tech have known me for a while, but and then I guess it was just this February or March during the middle of the beginning of the pandemic where there was another soundbite that kind of got broadly distributed. And here I am talking to you. I made it.
You made it. So was the soundbite at the beginning of the shutdown when you were like, hey, like who cares about the corporate structure or the cap table of like the airlines or other companies? Why not just like bail out the people? We have systems to handle what goes on with the company's balance sheet. Is that the soundbite you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I was completely shocked that, you would reward these, basically idiotic CEOs and boards with hundreds of billions of dollars when average, everyday, normal people were completely getting turned upside down. It made no sense.
Yes, it did not make any sense. And thank you for speaking up. There were a lot of folks that did pass that clip to me and the Yang Gang, and everyone was like, Chamath speaking sense. Like, it is like, and you're one of the only people who would go on someplace like CNBC and talk sense.
Well, I think I mean, at some point, look, if you're fed by the system, which those guys are, you have to basically trumpet conventional wisdom. And if you have a little, if you can be emancipated, you can kind of tell the truth. Most people want to tell the truth. But I just think they find it hard. And fortunately, for better or worse, I can tell the truth.
Yeah, you are one of the biggest truth tellers in the investment world, for sure, in the tech world. Yeah, maybe in American life at this point. So when Evelyn and I saw your 2016 soundbite that went viral, my wife Evelyn was like, we have to find out more about him. And so then we looked up your bio and saw that, you grew up the child of immigrants in Canada, not in affluent circumstances, kind of went through a lot. And then you wound up finding your way first to finance and then to tech, and then became part of these various rocket ships. But there was like a humility to you and your background where it's like, despite all of your success, it felt like you hadn't let like the bullshit creep too much into your in your mind. Was the sense that both Evelyn and I got.
The most important of the 10 crack commandments from the Notorious B.I.G. is never get high on your own supply. And so I've tried to live that out. Like, the reality is that I had a lot of skills that my parents gave me, but they also burdened me with some enormous insecurities, and it kind of kept me checked. So I think in balance, I never got too ahead of myself. I was kind of always trying to fight to figure out who I was. And that helped a lot, to be honest.
I too grew up the son of immigrants, but in my case, my dad was a physicist and engineer, so it was a circumstance where my brother and I were kind of expected to get good grades and the rest of it, which was like a different backdrop. The part of your background that I find most fascinating, I want to dig into, is so you had a lot of business success, and then you started a firm called Social Capital, and Social Capital did stuff that was like a dream. Because you probably know from my presidential campaign, I'm a capitalist. I think capitalism is a very positive force in human life. But I also think that there are these massive problems that capitalism isn't really directed at in earnest. Like, if you have certain types of problems that a market-driven company can address, then venture capitalists will throw money at them. And the thing that fascinated me about you and Social Capital is you were trying to apply those resources to problems that were longer term, that were bigger, that were more social. I think you were one of the only investors that was really pursuing healthcare and education. And I used to joke that healthcare was where good ideas go to die. Because I worked in healthcare tech for 4 years. A lot of people don't know this about me, but in like the early 2000s, I worked at a company that tried to manage patient pre-surgical data digitally. And it was such a freaking disaster. Like, you go in there and these hospitals, like you're like, oh, my whiz-bang product, it should work. And so I feel like because of the regulatory backdrop and a bunch of other things, like some investors shied away from it. So I love the fact that you actually tried to take the mechanics of venture capital to the biggest human problems.
When I left Facebook, I left because I was working on a project. I was a pretty technical person, a product and engineering person, and my team was responsible for building up Facebook to hundreds of millions and then billions of users. And along the way, I was building a phone and to compete against Android and Apple. And when push come to shove, Mark and I just couldn't get aligned on me getting the amount of money that I wanted, and so I left. And I remember I was sort of on my way to take a vacation right before I started Social Capital, and I got on the phone with Peter Thiel, and I said, Peter, do you want to invest with me? And I had made Peter a lot of money at Facebook, and so he said, absolutely. How much are you going to invest in yourself? And what's crazy was up until that point, nobody had asked me that. And I said, I don't know, like 5, 10, 15, 20 million bucks. He goes, not enough. He's like, you need to be at least 30% of the money. And at the time, it was like a $300 million fund or something. And so I did it. And the most important thing, Andrew, that I got from that was control. And I didn't realize how important control would become, because when I chose to invest in some of these areas and push came to shove, there was a lot of investor capitulation, because these folks are paid to basically get money back into their institutions and endowments and family offices that they work on behalf of. And this is when I really started to see the problem, which is that you have these enormous parts of society that are broken, where free markets and capitalism could fix them.
Yeah.
But then the money comes from essentially rich people. And the problem is helping rich people stay rich is a pretty sad use of one's time, quite honestly, at the end of the day. And B, their appetite to take risk is de minimis because they like staying rich. And so you start to have all of these systemic market failures. And this is a lot of why people point to capitalism as perverted or not working. But it's because we have moved away from what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to allow humans to make money by serving other humans, serving. And that's the whole point. And instead, we've refactored it into humans market manipulating and trading in esoteric instruments, or gerrymandering the financial markets. And all of that is just so utterly wasteful and sad. And so, Social Capital started initially with myself and a bunch of other folks' money. And then it migrated to largely just being my own, so that I could, take on the task in a small way of working in these market failures and trying to fix them without having return pressure. And then as it turns out, you end up making more money anyways. And so I think we've struck on a formula. I think it's one that's kind of like pretty bold and hopeful. And now the goal is to just do it at a scale that's hopefully 1 or 2 orders of magnitude bigger than the way in which we're doing it now.
Well, I would love to dig into what you found works in that space, but I also completely agree that there are a lot of financial actors who their job is just to generate a certain return on investment in a certain time period, and it's really influenced the way companies get built, where you show up. I have friends who took big slugs of VC money, and then the pressures on them to grow to the moon just skyrocketed.
No, I mean, I've said this before, but to your point, the Federal Reserve has sort of unfortunately been derelict in their duty. They now work in this weird, contorted way with Treasury to print and introduce enormous amounts of money into the system. What that's done is financialized every part of our economy. And the problem is there are certain things that should never have been financialized. Flying a rocket should not be financialized, right? Finding a cure to cancer should not be financialized. Figuring out some great compelling leap in AI and machine learning should not be financialized, but we have. And so what that means are venture capitalists no longer are technologists, they are financial arbitrageurs. Private equity folks aren't business builders, they are expense managers. On and on down the line. Hedge fund folks aren't market strategists, they are market timers. You put all of that together, and basically what happens is the economy whipsaws based on the whims of a few folks, a few rich folks who have the ability to, swing large amounts of money. And then again, these things that should be fixed through technology and innovation don't get fixed. And so this is sort of like the problem at hand. When you hear young people screaming from the mountaintops that capitalism is dead, I think what they're really saying is we have not seen, nor do we see enough of, examples of people that are solving these things in a way that they're proud of. And that's because too many people spend their time shuffling paper and just moving money around.
To the young people who think that capitalism is not working, they're right based upon the last number of years and decades, because at this point you have the winner-take-all economy that's kind of compounding on itself. And then there are a lot of folks who can make a lot of money not solving really the biggest problems that are growing more serious all the time, especially now with the coronavirus. And that's why I really can't wait to hear what you found. Do you know what time it is, Yang Speaks listeners? It's time to learn about ExpressVPN. They are the best. They are the virtual private network, rated number 1 by CNET and Wired. Don't let your data be hanging out in the internet for someone to grab and resell over and over again. Don't do it. Don't do it. Instead, get ExpressVPN. You beam into the internet through their secure servers, and it's like you're a secret agent. No one can find you. Your data can't be sold, resold. That's ExpressVPN for you. So if this sounds good to you, I mean, the song sounded terrible. I apologize. But if the ideas behind the song sounded good to you, visit expressvpn.com/yang. That's expressvpn.com/yang to get 3 months free off of the top-rated virtual private network by CNET and Wired. You can beam into the internet, and no one will be the wiser. Your data will stay yours. expressvpn.com/yang right now to learn more.
You sound like Buddy from Elf, like Will Ferrell in Elf when he's singing to his dad. He's just making up a song as he goes, which is pretty awesome. Or like those improv groups and they try and sing together the same tune and they don't know the melody, which is hilarious. However, I'll say this, ask yourself, how are you choosing which internet service provider you use? And the sad thing is most of us we have very little choice, if you will, because these ISPs operate like monopolies in the regions that they serve, and then they use that monopoly power to take advantage of their customers. So data caps and streaming throttles, and the list goes on. And frankly, the more Andrew and I have learned about this, the worse we feel. And worst of all, they log your internet activity, and they sell that data to other big tech companies and advertisers, which is not right and not fair. We're very, very against it. And to prevent that, frankly, from seeing my internet activity, we protect all of our devices with ExpressVPN. So check it out, expressvpn.com/Yang. And if you go, maybe Yang will stop singing. Probably not, though. So expressvpn.com/Yang.
So I get that you say, look, guys, we're going to tackle real problems like healthcare and education that are thorny and human and difficult and might not have the same kind of trajectory as like the business or consumer-facing tech that we're used to. And then I get that your investors are like, wait a minute, I didn't sign on for this stuff necessarily. Like, come on, Chamath, you could like pick all these winners in like easier spaces. And then eventually you're like, hey guys, like that's not really what I'm about. So I'm curious how many other folks have the same mindset you do, where it's like, look, I made a lot of money. I want to tackle really important problems that aren't as market friendly or time frame friendly as the stuff we customarily invest in.
There's a handful of folks. I think that the sort of the grandfather of the space, the person who's really pioneered this path, is a guy by the name of Vinod Khosla. He's an incredible entrepreneur, and his firm Khosla Ventures, I think, has done huge amounts to help the world in climate change and sustainability and agriculture. He's an example. I think that there are other organizations actually now that are more institutional that focus on innovation. Lux Capital is an example based in New York. So there are some, but by and large, the incentives aren't to do that. The incentives are that you can get paid a lot of money to just basically, put money into things that are obvious, mark up those companies, raise another fund, and rinse and repeat, because that pays you a great yearly compensation. And at that point, you kind of have to ask yourself, why would I even bother trying to solve cancer? This is crazy. It's just going to take too long, too much money. I may look stupid. I may get fired. And so, people's own simplified incentives kick in and innovation stops.
Yeah, it's much easier to try and jam yourself into Airbnb or pre-IPO or something, and then like turn around and be like, hey, I'm a genius investor.
I had my annual meeting today. And what was so funny is I remember, this is for my historic venture funds, and look, I put $1 billion, 3 or 4 into the ground. And, I told these guys, look, guys, you're going to make somewhere between $5 and $6 billion. So congratulations. It's all great. And one of my ex-partners texted me and he said, these are the same guys who just got so agitated when you did a 3D, rocket printing company, which is now the second most valuable space business after SpaceX that's private, where we did this satellite business that's also a multi-billion-dollar business, where we did an AI chip company that's helping to, do a lot of interesting things in science. You were just not rewarded. And again, I go back to this Peter Thiel discussion. If Peter hadn't forced me or hadn't put peer pressure on me to put so much money in, I would have never made those investments. Now, the way that I think about it is, look, I have a pretty crazy track record in just kind of making money, which is kind of okay. It's nothing that I'm particularly proud of, but I want to use it. And so the way I think about it is, we have an organization where if you put money in, a ton of money comes out. We've done it for 10 years. It's like 35% a year return. So when you put, $5 or $10 billion into a system like that, every year you're spitting out 2 or 3 or 4 billion of cash. But then I can take that, Andrew, and I can pump it into climate change, and I can pump it into education, and because it's all of our own capital, all of my own capital. I don't have to answer to anybody except the employees and the founders and the market. Right. And so, for example, there was a really incredible innovation that came out a few weeks ago from Google called AlphaFold. Now, what is that? They're using machines to guess the structure of proteins. And you may think, well, what does that have to do with me? Well, as it turns out, that is the basic building block to eradicate and solve an enormous swath of diseases. And so we have reduced an incredible problem of human health to one of compute power and to one of distribution. Now, that's where I could easily pour $1 billion of capital, spend the next 10 years and say, guys, let's take, crawl, walk, run approach, and let's just have 20 or 30 really important diseases that we can, basically put out of business. And I don't have to answer to anybody except the scientists that work on the projects, and then the market and the people suffering from those diseases will say, Chamath, faster, or hey, it doesn't work, or hey, it looks like it's working. And so I find myself for the first time very happy, actually, like, reasonably content, because we have this, it's kind of like being a country, Andrew, I think, and like, like you're Saudi Arabia, and one day you wake up and it's like there's oil underneath your feet. And all you have to do is just suck it out. And then when you sell it in the market, you have money. Except in our case, we have a plan with what to do with the money. We have these areas that we just think need to get fixed for humanity just to thrive.
That's incredible that you've gotten that kind of visibility into some of the thorniest problems, and you feel like you can make headway in solving them. I spent a number of years running a nonprofit that was trying to help young entrepreneurs in different markets around the country, primarily in the Midwest and the South. I would interact with billionaires, and then I would say, hey, support my nonprofit or support this thing I'm doing. And if they were into it, they would make a move. But even if you are a billionaire, you don't move in increments of like, 25, 30 million. Like if they wanted to be really supportive of my organization, I might get 1 or 2 million. And then I would be, frankly, I'd have to be like, well, that's freaking awesome, because, $2 million is like nothing to sneeze at. But there was this sense I had that among these billionaires I knew, like they were looking at trying to solve particular problems and they didn't think they had the resources. And you're like, wow, I'm like with a billionaire and like they don't think they have it. So I'm curious what your mindset has been when you look at some of like the biggest problems humanity is facing, and the scope of the problem relative to the resources that are being applied to solve that problem.
I really haven't met a problem that is really one of capital. And I think that I have more than enough resources to solve all the problems that we're trying to solve, except one critical one, which is human capital. And I think that's the most important thing to take away, which is that it's not that, for example, like, let's just say that you and I said, hey, let's go and get every single home in America to be carbon neutral. Okay, that's a great goal, right? How would we do it? Well, I can tell you what the answer is. And the answer is actually not too complicated, which is every house has a roof. Every roof can support residential solar. All of that solar energy can get basically stored on site in an extremely safe and predictable battery. And then you can give the homeowner or the apartment dweller an app that allows you to know exactly how much energy those solar cells on the roof has generated, and then you can use it to power the home or the apartment, and whatever's less you can put back into the grid. So how do you solve it? As it turns out, it's not one of capital, because you can get hundreds of billions of dollars of project finance to do that, because people spend hundreds of billions of dollars buying the bonds of utilities every single day in the marketplace. The really complicated part is, can you get 15 or 20 engineers to build the right app that allows you to basically understand how energy is managed and recirculated? Can you get the right, battery scientists and chemists to build the right battery storage technology? Can you string those batteries together across a neighborhood? So what I've found, and I could be totally wrong, but what I've found is that most of these solutions are ones of human capital, and that it doesn't take tens or hundreds of billions of dollars. People find ways of spending that much money, but that's just a lot of poor planning. Now, if eventually, Andrew, you and I were to find a solution, what I would say is it probably would cost 50 million to figure out. Then you and I would say, let's go to a small town like Palo Alto or someplace and say, let's deploy that there and figure it out. And then let's go to a city like Austin or Miami and say, hey guys, here's what we found. Let's go roll it out through all of Miami. And then we would go nationwide. And along the way, the capital markets are actually very liquid and would give you all that money non-dilutively. So it's not that I intend to never work with the capital markets. I just think that in that early phase, the single hardest thing to find is actually the people. And at the end of the day, these solutions can be found for hundreds of millions of dollars. This is why I always sort of get trapped in, people have approached me constantly and it's like, hey, what's your philanthropic strategy or charitable strategy? And I say, to be honest with you, I think that all of these problems that I'm looking at will be solved with technology-oriented solutions, the ones that I am the most sympathetic to: climate change, sustainability, agriculture, health, education. And so, eventually will I, find a way to give all the money away? Sure. But right now, I think it's important to recycle it back into for-profit businesses because this is how I solve the human capital problem. The single biggest thing that America has right now going against it is that we have 4 or 5 companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, that sucks up the enormity and the overwhelming majority of all talented technical human capital. Because if you are a smart young kid, a guy or girl graduating from a college and you know how to code or how to do something unique, how do you turn around to your family and say, I'm going to go and work at this startup for 80 grand a year or this nonprofit or something else versus going and getting paid $1 million a year at one of these big companies? It's really impossible, right? I mean, I don't know your situation, but when I graduated, that was the biggest sword of Damocles over my neck was the student debt that I had. And so, but when they go there, what products are they working on? This is unfettered free agentism. Imagine that you had a professional sports league where there was no salary cap. What would you do? You would go and hire and you would sign every single great player, stick them on the bench. You'd be guaranteed to win a championship. You'd be a monopolistic championship winner year in, year out.
You're saying that they get paid to do nothing? Because when you say the bench, that's what I thought of.
Yeah. No. That is the exact explicit strategy. Absolutely. So this is why I think, again, we have to find market-driven solutions. We have to find a way to use technology to build successful for-profit companies, because we have to convince all these people that are frankly withering and dying on the vine at these companies that they should be working at these young dynamic businesses. This is the forward bleeding edge. Like if you think about what happened in 1969, right? The Apollo project was the pinnacle of innovation in America. But what did you really have in that moment? What you had was an extremely diverse ecosystem where you had a public-private partnership. You had the government that was basically an enormous balance sheet, plus a lot of regulatory freedom and the ability to explore, which then saw the germination of hundreds of companies and an ecosystem trying to get America into space and then to the moon and then back. Now we have the exact opposite. We have the federal government that isn't exactly sure what its posture should be. They work with an incredibly dated set of laws from antitrust to otherwise, Section 230 and otherwise. And then we have a handful of companies that are effectively monopolies that understand that their balance sheet is a tool, that their balance sheet is equivalent to most other governments in the world, except maybe the United States, right? If you put the GDP of countries on a list and then put the market cap of these big companies together, these 5 companies are probably top 50 countries.
Sure.
Right. And so, yeah, you can greenmail people. You can basically work on all kinds of nonsense and random stuff. And as a result, innovation slows down. Progress slows down. As a result, wage growth slows down. As a result, people's frustrations grow. And then they point to capitalism, except really, again, what it is a bunch of financialization on one side and greenmail and hostage taking on the other that have basically trapped a whole cohort of young people in working on the things that really matter.
Chamath, I spent a number of years trying to counteract this. I don't know how much you know about my work with Venture for America. So what we did was we recruited enterprising young people, some of them technical, some of them not, to work at early stage growth companies in Detroit, New Orleans, Baltimore, Cleveland, Birmingham, and another half dozen cities around the country that are not New York, San Francisco, with the thought process being exactly what you described, which is, look, right now, if you're a whiz kid out of a lot of places, banks and consulting firms and tech companies will wave money at you, and then you will go there and you will do something that's not super socially productive. And so wouldn't you rather start a business in a place or help a business grow in a place that could use the talent, could use the energy, could use the help? I spent 6.5 years running a nonprofit that did this and has done this for, at this point, hundreds, maybe thousands of young people. And I saw the market forces you're describing in action, where if you're a really bright kid out of Penn and you go to a startup in New Orleans and then you see your friends getting paid 6 figures if it's a bank, maybe more if it's certain tech firms, and you look up, you're like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? Am I missing out because I'm here in New Orleans working for a certain amount of money? It's a very difficult landscape. Venture for America had a degree of success, but also I realized the enormity of the problem.
There was a tweet during the middle of the pandemic where some guy was like, he was an employee at Google and then had pretended to quit and got a job at Facebook and then was being paid by both. And because they're working from home, nobody knows.
Silicon Valley episode.
It's like out of Silicon Valley or Office Space, and you think this is an absolute fucking joke. And meanwhile, the Earth is burning to the ground. We can't even figure out how to do anything except distribute burritos by cars to people. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
I am a dad, and I am always getting invited to dad things. And then you're like, what kind of Prezi does this kid want? And you have no clue what that other what that other family's kid wants. No, it's true. You're like, I have no idea what your kid likes. And then you just take a guess, and you're just like, all right, I guess that, as long as I fulfilled my social obligations, we're okay. But you know what the kids actually would love? They would love a subscription book club that sends 5 beautiful children's books to the family every month, handpicked by experts. Tell me that all of the parents would not love you for that. Know what I mean? Like if they're struggling with their kids, and as a parent, I'll tell you, like you're always just trying to stay one step ahead of, whatever your kids' wants and needs are. If you could set it and forget it, where you just get sent 5 kids' books that are curated and appropriate, that's a game changer for parents. And this makes a phenomenal gift. Gift subscriptions are available for 1, 3, 6, or 12 months of books. So you could go the whole year and being like, I'm going to get you 12 gift boxes of books. You probably need to be related to that person. Or you could give them like 1 or 3 months if, it's not that big a deal to you. So this is the gift that's going to knock it out of the park for all of the parents in your life. Go to literati.com/yang for 25% off your first 2 orders and pick your kids' book club gift today. No one else has kids' book clubs like this. Only at literati.com/yang can you get 25% off your first 2 orders and receive 5 kids' books curated by experts delivered to your door or your friend's door every month. That's literati.com/yang. Make someone's holiday season actually just be the gift that keeps on giving this year. I want to dig into the example you just used about, for example, trying to make people's homes zero emission. And I was the judge of a clean tech competition recently, and the winner was this very simple product that was essentially a film you put over windows that make them retain heat and energy better. And one of the wonderful things about this product was that you don't need to be that high skilled to install it on Windows. I mean, it's essentially a window treatment. So to me, the problem is that, what percentage of American homes right now have this enviro-friendly window treatment? Virtually zero. And if you were to go to folks right now and say, hey, would you like this window treatment? If it will pay for itself within 18 months, including installation, most Americans would say sure. But right now, there's not there's not a mechanism to drive widespread adoption of that product. And that's to me a very simple, straightforward example. Now the solar panels that could help make the houses zero emission, let's say, would be an order of magnitude more difficult than this window treatment I'm describing. So the problem right now to me is that there are market failures in the talent level, which I agree is really, really hurting us in a massive way. It's hurting us culturally, economically, in innovation. And then there are inefficiencies in the market where you can see opportunities where folks should be installing this window treatment or solar panels. And it could be that maybe the solar panels aren't ready for prime time and you need to innovate to try and get them to a point where they're more cost effective. This window treatment is definitely cost effective now. It's the simplest thing in the world. But they're just a startup. They've got not that much money. And so they're looking around for ways to try and get folks excited about their product, like establish some kind of brand and track record. And I feel like there are a host of companies that are like that window treatment company, where they've got something real. It would make a positive impact. It doesn't get widespread adoption. They're not made of money to make it happen. And the value gulf for someone isn't so vast that, and I'll use myself as an example, like I judged this clean tech competition. I love that product. I was like, that should win. And then did I turn around and like get those, the window treatment done in my own home? Like I have not yet, and I apologize. but that's like the example is like, I was like staring right at it, and it would save me money eventually, but like it wasn't enough to impel me to act. Again, this maybe says something negative about me, and I'm sorry, audience, that I didn't do this. So that to me is like is an example of like kind of the problems that we're facing, where even if you have something that could help, right now our market is not properly rewarding adoption, and it would reward adoption of some other things that probably aren't going to be as positive.
Yeah, we are in this really important moment in time where folks will have to make some really important decision about what their priorities are. Look, I think that one of the things that you did, and this is going to be, and I've had a reasonably good track record of not necessarily being contrarian, but generally getting it right. So I'm just going to put something out there, which is that there was a lot of talk in the Democratic presidential nomination process about the progressive left. And there was this interesting thing, which is that you were this kind of like weird character that kind of just emerged, which was like smart and like normal and plain spoken. And like all these sort of like other smart, normal, plain spoken people were like, yeah, I like math. I like, things that make sense. I like sentences when he says something. And I think that there is something that's happening, which is hard to appreciate, which is that, progressivism, I think, is a doomed experiment. It's the first initial reaction of an extremely frustrated class of people. But I think what it gets replaced with is pragmatism. And I think what's interesting, the most indelible thing about the 2020 election process will be that you probably created, you showed product market fit for pragmatism. And I think that Joe Biden took advantage of pragmatism and he monetized it. And I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of, because that happens a lot in technology products that wins. Some guy innovates and the other guy monetizes and kind of closes the deal. But it is the winning strategy. And back to this sort of like film company, why I think this is important is that there are all kinds of technologies that right now are not managed pragmatically. Now, I don't know about this thing, but if this thing is wrapped in some dude with a hipster beard and hemp pants, he can go fuck himself, because it's not going to work, right? He needs to be pragmatic. It's like, what the hell do these films cost? How do I get them to the house? How does somebody come and install them? How do you give me an app that shows me how much money I'm saving? How do I make sure I don't look like an idiot for doing it, especially if the film is ugly? If he can pragmatically figure it out and separate all the emotional, hand-wringing around climate change, that company will win. And I think that we are going to get faced with a whole suite of decisions like that over the next 5 or 10 years as consumers that we can make at the political level, at the product level, at the technology level. Do you want pragmatism? And in a world where you decide yes, we'll have a lot of solutions. And a world where you want to wrap yourself around a flag of, identity politics and all this other bullshit, then we're just going to stay where we are.
Well, to me, the issue with that, the window treatment company, it's related to what's happened with solar and what happened with electric cars and other things. I think at some point the government and the public sector has to say, you know what, we really want solar energy to grow, even though right now it's not cost competitive with fossil fuels. So we're going to help make it happen. Like, I feel like something like that has to happen with a window treatment, where it's like, you know what, like, we can't get customers to get that excited about this just yet, because they're just kind of shrugging and like, letting heat escape through their windows. But we want to create jobs because there are over 10 million Americans who are out of jobs, and we think it would be great for homes to have this window of like. So this is what compelled me to eventually run for president. And I certainly appreciate your characterizing me as like the out of nowhere, plain spoken, like sense talking figure. That makes me very happy. And this is what I'm trying to connect with you on, or figure out where we diverge. Is like at some point I said, okay, of like the biggest, hairiest problems, you're going to need the public sector to get its shit together, or we're fucked. Was like eventually where I landed, and then the public sector is not exactly like a paragon of like efficiency or rationality or the rest of it. But I just did not see a way for us to solve some of the biggest, hairiest problems without the public sector saying, you know what? I think it might be a good idea to get this window treatment, guys.
I'll give you two examples where the public markets, or sorry, the public sector is actually getting their shit together. So the first is in climate change. And the single biggest boon to climate change is the fact that we have all of these really complicated politics in America's foreign policy related to the Middle East and to Russia. And the most important thing that I think is happening is the following dots are being connected. The faster that America basically puts the need to burn fossil fuels out of business, the faster that Saudi Arabia, all of the Middle East, and all of Russia will have to monetize their oil. Because if the future price is zero, then you're going to pull all of the oil out of the earth today to try to get whatever you can for it, even if it's a dollar. A dollar today is worth more than zero tomorrow. And in that, a couple of things happen. The Middle East actually has one incredible asset going for it in a world of climate change. That is sunlight. It has an enormous amount of sunlight. In fact, you may not know this, maybe you do, but the country that is the single most advantaged country in a world of photovoltaics and in a world of solar is Armenia.
I did not know that.
It's like the sunniest
I might have
place in the
Saudi
world.
Arabia.
Yeah, but the point is that all of that will allow us to basically completely refactor geopolitics. So the Middle East will be okay. There's going to be less fundamentalism. Because there's just going to be no money to fund it. So it doesn't matter who you are, but you'll be like, hey guys, I want to raise my Series B for ISIS, and people are like, no. We did the seed round. It didn't kind of work. We did the Series A. We hate it. We're done. And then the countries that it really, puts behind the eight ball is Russia, because they don't necessarily have the mechanisms to move off of fossil fuels. So, for example, our foreign policy posture will actually drive climate adoption more than people realize. But in that, what I think will happen is basically Russia gets put into a corner even more than they are now. The Middle East then becomes an element where, imagine they have all of this sunlight. The biggest thing that we haven't yet figured out, Andrew, in technology, in climate technology, is how to actually take the sun and use it to heat water and create steam at above 1,500 degrees centigrade. Now, you may say, well, what the fuck? What are you talking about? That is the most basic building block of any single factory. Because right now, the only way that we get steam to be super, super hot and to, use it to melt steel and make aluminum and stamp out, whatever crap we buy from China, it takes a furnace and it takes an enormous amount of fossil fuels. If all of a sudden you figure out how to use the sunlight, what America can do, again, with our foreign policy, is we can fund an entire factory build out all throughout the Middle East. And you know who it hurts? China. Now think of the two countries we've been told in every administration who is literally an enormous pain in our ass. China and Russia, and climate change basically nullifies both of them. And on top of that, you have this enormous demographic bubble in China where, in the next 50 years, they're going to have half as many people because everybody's basically dying and the birth rate is negative. So we're set up in a place where the Biden administration can basically deal the death blow from a foreign policy perspective, because we don't need to, hack China or Russia. We don't need to invade folks. We don't need to arm, countries against them. None of that needs to happen. All we need to do is become carbon neutral, because the minute that we do that, then I think, what you have is Russia in a really precarious position financially, and the Middle East that probably becomes the next manufacturing mecca for the world, which then puts Chinese GDP superiority in massive risk. So these are all these sort of interconnected things that I try to think about a lot. But this is why I'm spending so much time in climate change, because not only will you create great products, will the air be more breathable, will kids be able to study easier, will the seas stop, sea levels stop rising, but you fix all the geopolitical shit that we've been in for the last 20 years.
It's month 18 of the quarantine. It's not quite month 18, but it sure feels like it. And one of the things that's harder and harder for all of us is to eat healthy, to take care of yourself, to feel good about yourself day to day. If you don't take care of yourself, then nothing else works. And one way you can take care of yourself is by putting good stuff in your body. Athletic Greens is a product where they've put together 75 vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced ingredients into one mixture. You put it in water, you drink it, and then your body feels energized all day. Athletic Greens is really the name for this thing, because there's a lot of good stuff going into your body that you need. You're not going to get unless you're like consuming tons of salads and vegetation. I can't speak highly enough about the fact that this stuff really does feel like you're treating your body better and your body rewards you for it. So if this sounds like something that would help you get through your weeks, go to athleticgreens.com/yang and get a free year's supply of vitamin D and travel packs in addition to your order. That's athleticgreens.com/yang. Get more athletic. Become greener. One thing I love talking to folks like you about is what you see coming down the pike, because your job is essentially to both tell and build the future. So of the things that you're seeing that you're excited about, one, it sounds like you're very optimistic that we'll be able to advance cures for various diseases. I mean, that would obviously be incredibly good news for millions of Americans and a lot of other folks. It sounds like you're optimistic about moving towards being zero emission or carbon neutral in the days to come. So what are you seeing that you're super pumped about? I also want to call out something that you're doing. I saw that you're trying to train investment managers in a way that it sounds avowedly pro-social. You're just like, hey, let's find a way to train folks at scale that's outside of the traditional bounds. You don't need to go get some expensive degree and the rest of it. It sounded to me like you're gonna find people with unconventional backgrounds. So I want to congratulate you on that. So what are you seeing or doing that you're excited about right now that will help someone visualize what the future could be like in the next number of years?
The way that I would put it is, I think that if I had to be somewhat cynical about my career trajectory, the first 25 years has been, by all measures successful, but success has come by husbanding information, right? I had a knowledge edge and we didn't necessarily share that knowledge widely. I knew things that other people didn't know. I think for the next 50 years of my career, what I would like to do is break down those barriers and share all the knowledge that I've accumulated. Like Google makes all the information available at your fingertips, but information and knowledge, as you know, Andrew, are two totally different things. But I want to share my knowledge. And so I'll give you 3 areas that I think are going to get revolutionized, and I would love to be a part of it. The pandemic has really shown to me that our education infrastructure is totally broken.
I have kids. So watching them struggle with online school has been miserable, and we all talk about online schools. And I'm like, online school, better than nothing, but not great. And so I went looking for data points on how kids are learning. And the data points I found were that online learning is 30 to 70% as effective as in-person school. So I just wanted to throw that data point in there before you continue.
Well, no. So to your point, I think what the pandemic did was behaviorally show that kids can adapt and actually at least learn something in a remote environment, and that they can learn where, they are essentially virtual. Okay. I think the reason why that's important is that a whole bunch of services have also cropped up that allow you to find the best grade 5 math teacher, the best grade 6 algebra teacher, the best grade 7 history teacher, the best grade 11 drama teacher. And I think in the 21st century, especially in America, it stands to reason that we should be able to give these incredible teachers, we should pay them like athletes. They should get paid more like LeBron and Giannis, Steph Curry. These guys should be making 30, 40, 50 million bucks a year. And they should be teaching all American grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8 drills. And when you're in school, you should be consuming this video content with incredible local teachers that help supplement and reinforce what these best in class folks teach us. That's just like a thing where it's like, let's make sure, again, we even the starting lines, right? That we're not husbanding knowledge, that it's not the kid that's in fucking Larchmont that gets a better education than the kid in the Bronx. That's not fair, right? Because that kid in the Bronx could be the next Steve Jobs. And we're not going to get a chance to find out because that kid's teacher is just not as good as the kid's teachers in Rye and Larchmont and, Greenwich, Connecticut. And so this is something technology can fix. We can even the starting line, not even the finish line, but even the starting line. That seems to me like a really reasonable and humane and good thing to do. So that's something in education that I see coming down the pipe. In financial technology, in fintech, one of the most important things that we can do, one of the most important things that I can do, is make the knowledge I know about how to make money widely consumable. Train many other people in the lessons that I've learned so that they can make money for normal, ordinary folks. And this is a very simple way to close the inequality gap. Buffett has a saying, which is that the way you make money is not timing the market, it's time in the market. And so, my emerging managers program, I had 1,000 people apply. I'm going to teach thousands and thousands of people what I know. I'm not saying that what I know is special and will always be unique, but for right now, what I know is how to make billions and billions of dollars a year. And so let them make billions and billions of dollars for other people. That would be amazing. And then a third example is that, I've been working with a team. These are folks that I partnered with out of Google in a startup that's been building a chip for human learning and machine learning. And again, this is important because I think we are bumping up against the laws of physics. And I think that we're almost at a position to bend these laws of physics in a way where we can create so much computing resources available. And if you combine that with some of these things that I spoke about earlier, like what Google is doing with protein simulations, we're going to solve all human disease. And, it's not going to cost that much money, $5 billion, $10 billion, like not a big deal. I can fund it. Zuck could fund it. Gates could fund it. Who cares? And so one of us should do it. And so I think those are 3 examples of areas that I'm pretty addicted to beyond climate change. I would say climate is my first one, to be completely honest with you, Andrew. It's kind of become an obsessive.
Sure, it drives everything else. I mean, heck, plus you live in California and literally like the countryside's ablaze.
You have no idea, like in September, the sky was orange and it looked like it was out of a movie where like aliens were invading. I've never felt more insecure since I moved to the United States. I mean, I had my next most moment of insecurity was when, Trump won the election. I thought I was going to get kicked out and sent to some internment camp. I really did. And then the second most insecure moment I ever had was looking at the forest fires in California when I was here.
No, I mean, you were obviously focused on climate change well before the sky turned orange, but the sky turning orange, I'm sure, made you feel like you were making the right choices. You're like, thank goodness I'm working on this. There was like a piece of it too. I was trying to figure out what you could do to try and prevent the forest fires. And it turns out that we properly manage something like 2% of the nation's forest. The forest that was burning in California is a national forest. Like the state of California doesn't even really have jurisdiction over it. And so I looked at the U.S. Forest Service's budget, and the U.S. Forest Service's budget, probably shocking to no one here, has not changed that much in the last number of years. Even as you can tell, the forest has been drying and turning into more of a tinderbox because, I looked at what was going on in California and I thought this is tragic and terrible, and it would be incredibly destructive for any form of confidence.
Trees are an incredible carbon sink, as you know. if you look across the world, the United States is probably the third or fourth best place to grow trees. The Amazon being the best, and then Indonesia, Colombia. There's a handful of places that are incredible. And within the United States, it's actually North Carolina, Mississippi, that corridor, which is the best if you just look at vegetation and whatnot. So we got really interested. To your point, I got interested in this too, and I was like, what could we do in reforestation? And so we started a project where we're buying. I can't remember the exact number, so this is going to sound a little aloof, but 10,000 or 100,000 acres. And we have these drones that map the burnt down forest.
Yes.
And the drones have guns, and it shoots saplings into the ground. And so it's kind of like a whole Star Wars thing where like these drones just, come up over the hill and then they run over all this land.
And just start freaking planting trees from the sky. Like, I've seen this stuff, and it's like the coolest thing in the world. So I'm going to run this by you, Chamath, because I was trying to figure out, okay, how can you help with this forest management? The obvious thing to do would be to like hire tens of thousands of park rangers to burn off, the brush and actually try and manage the forest in like a sensible way. There is some politics around that, but at this point I feel like it's obvious. But then I was imagining, just like you had the drones fly over and just freaking start like planting trees by the thousands in these acres of land. Like, I was trying to imagine, okay, could you have a set of drones that are hovering over this forest along with heat sensors, and then whenever like a fire started going up, then the drones actually can like pick up on it and being like, hey guys, FYI, there's a brush fire in sector, like H4.
Andrew, it's a great fucking idea. This is what I mean. Like, look, there's a, and here, by the way, can I just say the other thing? The other thing is that we've bastardized entrepreneurship in America, where people think that starting a company needs to mean you become a, centibillionaire, otherwise you failed. And that's just not true. Okay. You don't want to be as dysfunctional as it takes to make that much money. Let me just tell you, being up close and personal to it. What I will tell you is that there's enormous respect that you should have for yourself, and even building a company where you can have 8, 9, 10 employees, all of whom can have families and homes, and you support your community, and you send your kids to college, and you have some savings. That's amazing too. So you should go, and somebody should go and start this business that does that. Heat sensing with drones, sells that service back to local, state, and federal authorities, makes a couple $1 million a year in their company, has 15 or 20 people employed. Everybody can make a very good living wage. That is success.
I could not agree more. One of the things that breaks my heart right now is all of the small business owners are going bust because their business is drying up because of the pandemic. And if you have even a restaurant or bar or food truck, you're employing like 4 or 5 people, or in some cases, restaurants, it'd be dozens, hundreds of people. Like, that is success. I agree with you. I ran a small private company myself, had nowhere near the level of commercial success as, you or some of the people but I felt very, very proud.
Andrew, let's be honest. More people look up to you than look up to those folks. And the reason, again, is because there's a humanity and an authenticity in just trying to do good by people. And look, you can get really cutthroat and all of a sudden make all the money, quote unquote. It's not a path to happiness, And I've learned the hard way, because I've fallen for this trap many times. There's been a bunch of times at the fork in the road where I've said, okay, it's not enough. And it's like, what the fuck do you mean it's not enough? It is enough. It's all enough. It's like, now the real solution to your happiness is about being fulfilled and all of these other things that don't come from making money. And it comes from employing people and knowing that they have good lives. And, I've started to explore, for example, a different program to try to instigate some change in student debt. It's called income sharing agreements, right? Where you pay people to go to college or to a trade school, and you get a share of their income above a certain threshold, right? And then they pay you back, and then they're never in debt. And, you kind of, if it works at the scale of $1 billion, it does kind of really put student lending on its heels. But what is that? That's an effort to sort of like say, yeah, could you make a ton more money doing something else? Possibly. But will this make, millions of people's lives meaningfully better, even if you basically break even and then some? Yeah, that's better. So I think it's good to have examples of folks like you basically reminding people that like this kind of like crazy obsession with wealth that we have in America is really not what it was ever, and it was not what it was all about.
You know, Chamath, like there's a regular joke around my family and the Yang Gang that I would get described as a billionaire periodically, and we had a good laugh because my wife would be like, "Well, it's news to me," because we're just like living like a pretty normal life. And you know, I think that your experience is really fascinating on this level too, because you know you reached a level of business success that most people can only dream of. But I have friends who also like struggle with. I mean, the most glaring example from a recent history is like the tragic story of Tony Hsieh, who I'm sure you knew because you know they're like our circles are not that big. Did you know Tony?
I knew him sort of arm's length. I've met him 3 or 4 times, but I didn't really know him that well.
So Tony, obviously, I mean, world famous entrepreneur worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and had a void that you know was difficult to fill. And then when the coronavirus shut down your ability to socialize in various ways, then you know like tragedy followed thereafter. I mean, the human condition is inescapable. It's universal. It's everywhere. I certainly feel very fortunate that I went down a path where I was trying to do good stuff and help people. And my wife is a rock star on this. So like I ran a private company. It gets bought for like a little bit of money, 2009. And then I go kind of wholesome do-goodery nonprofit guy with the thought process being like, look, I made enough money so I can like work for essentially for free for like a period of, I had timed it for myself. I said, I can work and not worry about money for 5 years. And at the end of that, like, hopefully I will have done something positive with this nonprofit. And then 6.5 years later, I was like, okay, the problems I was trying to tackle are so much bigger than anything I could have imagined. Like the only thing I can think of that would actually give me a real chance at solving the problem was run for president, which was also, by the way, economically highly impractical. But then thanks to like folks who actually started to support me and believe in me, like, you know, the campaign worked out at a particular level. And now I literally like I wake up and just trying to find ways to help people and like do positive things. And it's really exciting. And like it goes back to what you were talking about before, where you have these 5 megacorps who'll just freaking, you know, drop 6 and 7 figures on young people and say like, you know, your highest use is hanging out here in the mothership. And
The intellectual lobotomization of America.
my turn of phrase for it, Chamath, back when I was young, and this is not a knock, I'm sorry, but I was a corporate attorney for 5 months, and it was a fine firm, and they were very good to me. But I said at the time that this place is like a temple to the squandering of human potential because it had like a lot of really bright people, but we were handling the minutiae of corporate transaction documents. And I was like, this cannot be the highest use of this group of people because, you know, there's some very, very talented people on these walls. And then I made the decision to go, you know, start a business, which flopped. And then like I had some real struggles in my 20s because I was making less money than everyone I knew. Like, you know, I'd have all these bad dates because like I would go out and like, I'd be self-conscious about money or like, you know, buying like, you know, like, like a certain type of meal or like taking with someone to a certain sort of place. So I went through like a real journey that way. That ended up making it so that my standards for myself materially were like just not that high. and I also got lucky. I married a woman who's like, you know, cool with her husband not maximizing my economic opportunities at every turn. But the thing that, you know, I tried to do with Venture for America, and the thing I'm still sort of pushing on, it is really trying to unlock folks from the paths that our market will kind of drive them towards. And one thing I think excites so many people about you is that people can sense that you're driven by something bigger than maximizing your bank account.
Yeah, I'm driven by really trying to figure out who I am and just to have more happy days than unhappy days. And I know that sounds so stupid and trite. And like some people can say, well, yeah, you're in a position to do that. And it's like, no, I learned that I was chasing other people's definitions of success for so long. And that's what was making me so unhappy. And so that's why things were never enough, because it was somebody else's definition of what should have made me happy. And so when I got it, I wasn't happy. Yeah, I mean, I was happy for a second or whatever, get a job, get a promotion, buy a car, buy a better car, buy a house. And now my life is really, really simple. Like, I mean, I look forward to and as a result, my ego's gotten a lot less. And so a simple example, I do Pilates.
Dude, that's awesome.
I do Pilates twice. Now, why? In my 20s and 30s, I was, I got to go work out. I'm working out. And I was in constant fucking pain. And then I realized it just doesn't matter what I look like. It matters how I feel. And Pilates twice a week makes me go to sleep, Andrew, and wake up. And I don't know if you see this in your 40s, but it makes me wake up pain-free.
Wow.
And it makes me so happy. Like more than anything else in the world, when I wake up and my back isn't feeling like it's wrenched and my knees and whatever, I'm really happy I can start the day with less, kind of like mental stress, right? That's a really simple thing. And so I've learned over time that I've built pretty basically, and, spending time with my kids and all of these things are just not things that I knew how to think about because other people's definitions were caught up in a lot of superficiality. And that's where we all lose our way. And so, if I can work on projects that are inspiring, that's pretty cool. If I can make decisions, that's cool. I also just want to be able to say things, even if they're not cool to some folks, because that's another thing that I think really prevents people from being happy right now. I do think that there's just, everybody's so pent up. They're ready to judge. They're ready to cancel folks. They're ready to just kind of like wipe them off and they're ready to be judgmental. And again, another key feature of pragmatism, I think, is that everybody's got something useful to do and to say. And you find a way of just forgiving, the bursts that people may regret in their youth or otherwise. For example, I had this thing last week where I've been saying pretty vociferously, we are headed for a biological Patriot Act in America, It is inconceivable that if you're working at a company or if you're part of a union or if you're going to get on a plane, that you're not going to want to have some assurance about the people around you having been vaccinated. Like that ship, in my opinion, is fucking sailed. And so like all the anti-vaxxers will have to have a market clearing price to pay for a choice of not vaccinating themselves. Because now that we have these kinds of communicable diseases, this is the beginning, not the end of airborne diseases like coronavirus. COVID-19 will be followed by COVID-20 and COVID-21 and COVID-22 and COVID-35. And these will be pernicious diseases. And so there will be a mandate to vaccinate. And I know that pisses off a lot of people, but so be it. And I put this out on Twitter and I said, maybe folks that get vaccinated should wear a pin or a mask. And people equated it to the Holocaust. And I was like, holy shit, that is super judgmental and really, really like, wow, that is an intense reaction. So there's no way to have a debate. You can't have a conversation about these things. And what I tried to tell people is like, well, if you don't want a mask, guess what? The government's going to mandate an app. And are you going to be happier or sadder when now all of a sudden there's a central repository that China and Russia are trying to hack that has all of our vaccination histories online?
I've got a quick question on this point. If I get vaccinated and you're not vaccinated, like that's your problem, not mine, right? Like as long as I'm vaccinated, at least I'm going to get kind of because my plan is to get vaccinated, very publicly. And then at that point, if someone around me does not get vaccinated, like they're in trouble, but I'm not in trouble, is my understanding. I don't know if that's right. I'm just asking a question hypothetically because I feel like the folks who are going to suffer from non-compliance are the people who don't get vaccinated.
I think it's TBD. And the reason I say TBD is I think that we need to see, typical vaccines, the phase 3 testing protocols take years. We've accelerated things and we've truncated the entire process, phase 1 to phase 3 in 9 months. And so, we have early efficacy data, we have early transmission data, we have early
That's true. If it's 95% and then everyone around you is like non-vaccinated and contagious, then it could like that 5% is a problem. That's true.
What if the half-life of this thing is 9 months or 18 months? What if you need to get vaccinated 3 or 4 times? What if only 35% of the population get vaccinated? Even at 95% efficacy, you still have an R naught greater than 1. And so you have a disease that's causing a tremendous burden that could be shutting down businesses and economies. And
Oh no, that's right.
So my point in all of this and bringing up this example is just back to the other thing, which is like, I think part of being happy is being able to say things and not being attacked and not being judged and not being canceled. And being able to find a pragmatic way of talking about ideas.
One of the principles that I want to stand for is grace and forgiveness. Not forgiveness even, because a lot of this shit's not even wrong. It's more like grace and understanding, or grace and humanity. And one of the things I know as now a public figure, if you were to take a minute of my worst moments, I would seem like a raging asshole. Like, no doubt about it. And so, like we're holding everyone to a standard that like none of us could satisfy if you took us at our worst. And there are times when someone just gets videotaped at their worst, like, in public, like they're like, a total dickhead to someone in public, and then like their life gets ruined. And obviously, like, I'd prefer that maybe they hadn't done whatever the heck they did. But again, if someone had a camera on me in my worst 60 seconds, like, I would seem like a terrible human. And I just think that's true of every single one of us. And if you're going to have a discussion, it's one of the reasons why, and I think people know this about me, it's like I sit down and have conversations with people that, like I disagree with on like various things, political or otherwise. And I just think it's ridiculous that like somehow I'm supposed to be like mindful of the fact that someone might disagree with me on some level. It's like, like, it'd be surprising if they didn't disagree with me on some level, because we're both different human beings. Anyway, I just wanted to echo what you're suggesting.
I think that we all are trying our best. And
yes,
I think it's when we forget that we just act like raging dipshits. But we are all honestly trying our best every day.
Amen.
And if you keep it in mind, it's amazing, how much empathy you can have for other people. I don't think that was a particular skill of mine. I had a real chip on my shoulder, which was like, I had a tough life. So, F this, F that, F the other person. This person had a cushy life. This person was rich. And I just realized, no, we're all trying our best. And, that's really helped me a lot. It's not to say that people give that back to me, but at least I can give it to other people.
Well, I hope you receive more of it, Chamath. And, Pilates, so many people swear by it. Like, it seems like it makes your connective tissue, like, stronger and healthier in a way I feel like everyone would benefit from. Because we're about the same age. I'm 45, you're 44. And there is like an adaptation that occurs like around this age where like the shit you did when you were a young man, like just does not work as well.
I can drink once or twice a week now. You know what I mean? Like if I get even buzzed, I don't sleep well. I wake up the next day, I feel like complete shit. It's just not what it was like 20s and 30s. I could rage, wake up, go and do whatever, it's just not what it is. And so I have to reframe my expectations and find what really makes me happy.
Yes, and find new ways to be excited and fulfilled, because they're like diminishing returns to some of the things that we did when we were younger. And then you kind of find the new things with expanding returns. Certainly for me, kids are a big part of that, and there are times when I'm playing with my kids where frankly, like work creeps in and I'm like, oh shit, I need to get back to this person. But then I'm just like, if I can't enjoy this time with my kids, I'm sunk, so then like you have to say to yourself, like, this is the purpose, I shouldn't be like, trying to abbreviate this time. I should be trying to elongate it.
The two best memories of the last month that I have were, one, when we all decided, me and my kids, I have 4 kids, that we wanted to watch Tenet, and we pre-ordered it. And
dude, I haven't seen that shit yet.
Well, yeah. So so it got released 2 days ago. So I know this because we would check it. Is it released yet? Is it released yet? And so we've been building this thing up now. Tenet could be the worst fucking movie alive. It won't matter because we are all so pent up. Myself, my partner, my kids. And then the second is we watched, and if you've never watched it, I would tell your audience to do it too. We all on a Saturday binge watched Never Have I Ever, which is a Netflix comedy that's executive produced by Mindy Kaling from The Office. It is so fucking brilliant. And these are the 2 moments of the pandemic that I remember the most over the last 2 months: jumping, screaming, laughing. Anyways, small things can make a big difference in people's lives. It allows you to find more empathy for others, I think.
Okay, Never Have I Ever, done for me and my audience. The question is, like, have you seen Tenet, and is it awesome?
No, we're watching it tomorrow night. This is the problem. My kids, in the middle of the pandemic, like, their only social interaction is through Roblox or, Fortnite, because they can talk to their friends in a non-school setting. And so, I give them the choice. I'm like, you can have, 60 minutes of game time or a 2-hour movie. They're like, we'll take the game time. And then but then you got to read and do the dishes and like plow the driveway. They're like, that's fine. So we negotiated Thursday. So I get to watch it tomorrow with them. So I can't wait.
Well, I hope it's awesome. Congratulations to you for the work you're doing to help build a future that's habitable and healthy and everything else you're doing, Chamath. There are not many people like you who are trying to solve human problems that are not being, frankly, rewarded by the market at the same pace or level. And so I was excited to sit down with you. I'm excited to see what you do next. I'm excited to see the future you help us get through. Appreciate the heck out of your time.
You're a real inspiration, and I'll tell you why. Also, just growing up as an immigrant person, to see somebody who kind of takes the world stage the way you did, just personally for me. I'm sure you've heard that a lot from folks, but it's inspiring to see somebody just go for it. And I just want to thank you, because it gives my children are half South Asian, half Asian. And so, there's a context where, like, my kids see, an older version of themselves on a debate stage. It's really fucking amazing. So I just want to say thanks for inspiring a lot of people, including myself.
Really appreciate it. And all the best to your kids. Tell them I'll do better next time. Just kidding.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please do subscribe to Yang Speaks and click on notifications so we can let you know every time we have a new episode.